It is a martyr's funeral, and nobody does martyrdom quite like the Iranians. Qasem Soleimani's coffin arrived in the city of vows this morning, mourned by hundreds of thousands and revered like a saint. The feeling of persecution lies at the heart of Shia Islam, and so the storied general who fought proxy wars for his country is just the latest victim. A few months ago, the general's regime was shooting protesters. Now the nation is rallying around both flag and faith. Fort Bragg, North Carolina, over 6,000 miles away. And the first of 3,500 troops are being deployed from America's Rapid Reaction Force, the 81st Airborne, to somewhere in the Middle East. Their commander-in-chief ramping up the tension in the hope of preventing a war. Let this serve as a warning, Mr. Trump tweeted overnight, that if Iran strikes any Americans or American assets, we have targeted 52 Iranian sites, some at a very high level and important to Iran and the Iranian culture, and those targets will be hit very fast and very hard. Those tweets followed US intelligence that Iranian ballistic missiles kept in underground bunkers had been moved to a heightened state of alert. As for the US strike on General Soleimani, well, Pentagon officials have briefed that this was just one of a menu of options and that they were astonished when the president took it up. Mr. Trump had seen Iran-backed militants attacking the US embassy in Baghdad, and though no Americans were hurt, the president decided to have the general assassinated.
It may be that there's a little noise here in the interim that the Iranians make the choice to respond. I hope that they don't, and I am confident that the decision we made to take down this terrorist, this designated terrorist who had inflicted so much harm over such an extended period, was the right course of action to reduce risk to America.
But at what cost? Tonight, most Shia MPs in Iraq's parliament approved a bill to expel American-led coalition troops. The bill was non-binding, though Iraq's Shia Prime Minister recommended it. In southern Beirut today, the dead general's Shia allies, the men of Hezbollah or the Party of God, chanted that they were ready to sacrifice themselves for the Shia cause. As their spiritual leader, Sheikh Nasrallah, told them that American soldiers would return home in coffins, that military bases and warships were now fair targets. Mr. Trump has upset a hornet's nest of Shia rage, though whether the rhetoric of revenge matches up to reality is anyone's guess. Are you predicting a war in the Middle East now? We're not predicting a war soon, he said. But if there will be a war, we are ready. This was a criminal assassination, and we will respond. Iran funds Hezbollah here in southern Beirut, and General Soleimani is believed to have visited his forces here not long before his death. Some American officials claim that he was planning an imminent attack which could have claimed hundreds of lives. Others say the attack was not imminent, that the threat was not specific, and that anyway, Ayatollah Khamenei, back in Tehran, would have needed to have approved any operation first. Still, Iran-backed militants in Iraq have put out this propaganda video saying they can target US troops at the embassy when the order is given. That may be bluster. Mr. Trump is gambling that it is. UK forces and commercial interests are also at risk. The Ministry of Defence is sending 2 warships, the Montrose and Defender, back on patrol alongside British shipping in the Straits of Hormuz. The Foreign Secretary today confirmed he received no warning the UK's closest ally would kill an Iranian general, though Dominic Raab, a former government lawyer, defended the strike.
The operational assessment has been done by the Americans is that there is a right of self-defence there, and as long as
it's tightly circumscribed, though, under international law.
Well, it is, but if you're attacked, and there's no doubt... Look, it was General Soleimani's job description to engage proxies, militias across not just Iraq, but the whole region. I think the important thing now is to de-escalate the tensions, to try and restore some stability, and make sure, whilst we're containing the nefarious actions Iran is undoubtedly taking, that door to a diplomatic route out from the international cold is there for Iran. But it's ultimately got to be for the regime and the leadership in Tehran to make that choice.
But that door is slamming shut. In Iran's parliament today, they chanted death to America. The Islamic Revolution has rediscovered its voice, as it always does when it's under attack. This is not just a funeral worthy of an Ayatollah. It's an outpouring of emotion which may well solidify the hardliners' grip on power. And if Soleimani's death leads to American troops being forced out of Iraq, it will give him what he always wanted. Jonathan Rugman, Channel 4 News, Beirut.
Well, the Foreign Office has strengthened its travel advice for Iran and Iraq since the assassination of General Soleimani. Only essential travel to the countries is advised, but hundreds of people are still in there. The UK has 400 troops at 2 bases in Baghdad and 1 in Erbil. Security at these locations has been tightened since Friday's killing. 1,400 military and civilian personnel are currently in Iraq supporting operations to counter the threat from ISIS. 100 Special Forces troops are deployed in eastern Syria. The UK also has 6 Royal Navy ships in the Gulf. Well, joining me now is Dr. Lina Khatib from Chatham House. Thanks for coming on the programme. How vulnerable are these British targets, let's call them that? How vulnerable are they in the Middle East?
We're only as vulnerable as any participant in the international coalition against ISIS is, because we're not alone out there. We're there as part of a mission to counter this terrorist organization. And obviously we're not alone, which means we're not going to be singled out as a target. However, with this very explicit threat issued by Iranian partners that American soldiers might be targeted, of course, any partner of the United States needs to be vigilant.
Because we are still officially the little Satan, aren't we?
Well, I mean, right now, I think Iranian sights are very much squarely on the United States rather than the UK. It is very much about Donald Trump. It's really a standoff between the Ayatollah in Iran and Donald Trump himself. In a way, it's become almost personal. I don't think that Iran is interested in declaring war against the West or targeting Western targets indiscriminately. I think they've been very specific in saying US only.
When you look at what Dominic Raab, the Foreign Secretary, had to say today, when you consider the fact that the Prime Minister hasn't said a single word about this and is only now coming back from holiday, does that indicate a certain lack of comfort, shall we say, in the British position regarding this?
I think it indicates a desire to, in a way, stay out of it. Because this is very much about US versus Iran, the UK does not need to involve itself more than necessary.
But we've already been ticked off by Mike Pompeo, in fact, all Europeans, but I think he also mentioned London as not responding sufficiently to this. Well, we know that Raab is going over on Thursday to see the Secretary of State.
We have now responded, but I don't think it merits more than this, because this is not really our fight. This is now really between the United States and Iran. And I think the US will, of course, try to put pressure on its allies, as we have heard. But I don't think we necessarily need to heed this call to do much more than we already are doing.
Now, let's talk about Iraq briefly. The Assembly today voted to get rid of the 5,000 US troops. Will they actually now have to leave?
They don't yet have to leave, because for that to happen, there needs to be a law. And the current cabinet in Iraq is only a caretaker cabinet because officially the Prime Minister resigned, which means it cannot set laws. So it's a matter of time. But I think eventually it's going to be very difficult for the US to justify staying.
And in 20 seconds, is there any danger of renewed civil war inside Iraq as a result of all this?
The problem is that today a lot of Sunni MPs did not vote for this law, which means there's already a division happening in Iraq regarding what to do.